Hey, how you guys doing out there? Good to see you.
Doing well. Good seeing you.
Michael Chapman. For those of you who forgot, Michael Chapman is the unanimously appointed casino guru. And we are joined today by Ari Mizrachi, who is none other than the Senior Vice President of Tangam Systems. Hello, Ari. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
And you know what? When I think of the word analytics, you know what pops into my head? Ari's head. I mean, it's just he's universal. He's just all over the world preaching analytics and giving this tremendous advice to casinos on how to make the best of their operations. It's really a pleasure to have you on the show, Ari. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Okay, and to all you out there, this is the second podcast of the Global Table Games and Game Protection Conference. Now, I got to say that carefully because that's a little bit of a tongue twister, as you know from last week, Michael. We were both trying to say global table games and global table games 10 times quick. So it is a bit of a tongue twister to the point where, one day I might have to consider changing the name of the conference. What do you think, Ari? Is it too hard to say Global Table Games and Game Protection Conference?
It depends on how much coffee you had that day, but no, I think the name's fine the way it is.
Okay. What we want to discuss today is the future of table games. Now, I have been hearing for the last year that table games in brick and mortar casinos is in desperate trouble. It started with the advent, or I should say, the expansion of electronic games (ETGs) during the pandemic, and they're gaining more and more foothold in the casinos. And now everybody's talking about the iGaming threat to the brick and mortar table games. And a lot of people in the business, Benny Mancino, for one, who I like to call Mr. Table Games, he's expressed his concern about the possible extinction of brick and mortar table games, hitting perhaps as soon as the end of the decade. And, this is really, serious stuff and scary to me. And so I'd like to get some opinions on what is the real future of this. And if you think back to like extinction threats before concerning the casino industry, you guys remember, of course, when Atlantic City came into existence, everybody was saying, well, that's going to be the end of Las Vegas. And then when
the tribes came and they thought that gaming was all over everywhere.
In Atlantic City, the tribes were coming in first in Mohegan, right up there. No, Foxwoods. When Foxwoods came, everybody was saying, "Oh, that's the end of Atlantic City." But it never seemed to really happen that way. But now there is concern that this really might happen to table games. So, Michael, Ari, what is the reality of this?
I mean, go ahead, Michael, please. If you'd like.
I'm gonna start a little bit with. I think the demise of table games is probably a little overstated. Certainly, there's going to be some loss of tabletops for sure. I think that you're going to get into a situation where the successful properties, brick and mortars, are going to be able to collaborate, cooperate, and communicate with the online world and bring an experience that you can't get online to the brick and mortar, that interpersonal communication. And I think that that's always going to be necessary in a human environment.
Let me ask you something, Ari. What does the analytics say about this?
Well, let's put analytics aside, right? I think that, we hear it a lot, but I guess what we don't talk enough about in our industry, and I always think about start with the guest first and why they do what they do first, and let's work backwards, right? Why do people play table games, and how does that compare to these alternatives? So, table games have been around in the traditional sense in the U.S. since like the 40s, 50s, right? For the most part. Blackjack hasn't changed. Some rules have changed, but the game of blackjack and how you interact with it and touch chips and look at cards and all that, it's one of the, table games itself is fairly long lasting. Why? Because no one has created a better alternative yet. An alternative game to play. That's my perspective, right? When you think about slot machines, and I think we talk about it in generic 50,000 foot terms, but understanding why people play brick and mortar and then comparing it to ETGs and online is important. But for me, it's understanding why do people play a table game? Why do they choose to play table games today versus playing alternatives, right? I'm sitting in New Jersey right now. It would take me 50 minutes to be at the Borgata, or it could take me 32 seconds to play online. To me, are completely two different experiences, right? Like, why do people play blackjack? Let's forget about advantage players. Let's forget about card counters. Let's talk about the 99.999% of people that play that are not card counters or advantage players. They play for an experience. Some people just want to gamble and want to get that, for lack of a better term, fix in, and they just want to play 5 hands of blackjack. Well, then online gaming is a really good alternative. But if you want to go and walk through the casino, finding the table and the deal that you want to play with, touching money, touching chips, having the dealer tell you when you're wrong and right against basic strategy and all that, well, then you have to play brick and mortar. And you can have a meal and you can have all those things. It's two completely things. It's apples and absolute oranges when it comes to brick and mortar table games, and whether they be ETGs, and we could talk about that, or iGaming. They are not the same. Yes, the game of blackjack is the same. Whoever gets a higher number, closer to 21, or going over is a bust, right? Like, just a simple of what is blackjack and what is the game 21. They're two completely things. The only way that table games in the United States or the world could deteriorate is us as operators force that to happen. And today, table games is not as fun to play as it was 20 years ago or 15 years ago.
Yeah,
or before COVID.
Addressing that, like there's 2 points you made that like really just came to my mind, and one of them is the apples and oranges. Like, I guess if us 3 guys are apples, the younger generation is the oranges, and like, to me, playing in a casino without shuffling the chips and without the noise and all that, the real noise and the atmosphere and even the smoke to some extent where smoking goes on in casinos, it's just not the same experience. And so, like, I've also been hearing that in addition to one thing that is being done to help save table games or to keep it interesting is the advent of all the, like you said, Ari, the games are still the same, but there's different rules now. And there's also variants. All these new games that we see at the Global Table Games and Game Protection Conference on exhibit. I mean, this really keeps the interest, keeps the evolution going, so it just doesn't fall flat on its face. So I think that's a real positive. But I'm also hearing, and you guys have probably heard more about this than I have, about what's like the fact that we have to get these apples and oranges together for the brick and mortar casinos, meaning that the younger players, let's say being did I say apples or oranges? I don't know, but whichever ones the younger players are, to keep them interested in getting away from that 30-second trip from their kitchen to the laptop to play online games. So, like,
yeah, I just think that, for me, like, this is a much longer discussion than we'll have today, but the other thing about what is a threat to brick and mortar is a threat to any other business. So you're going to have your convenience customers that may stop coming to brick and mortar because it's going to take me 50 minutes to drive versus 5 minutes. But typically that is not your higher average wager customers, right? So for the most part, what I think will happen at some point is that you're very low, and I don't, because I hate when folks talk about your low end players that aren't like, listen, wagers are relative, right? People that are betting $5 might be a huge amount of money. Then people betting 5 million might be irrelevant to them. But I think your low average bet players will start gearing towards this online ETG space. Why? Because it's like they can't afford to pay for the experience that in order to as costs go up for labor benefits and all the things, you're not going to find a $5 blackjack game anymore. And if an operator has a $5 blackjack game, they're just not profitable, right? So I think that your mid-tier or mid-average wager to higher players, there's always going to be brick and mortar business available. But the operators have to figure out to make sure that experience is second to none. And frankly, since COVID, the guest experience has completely deteriorated, right? Is that, I started as a dealer, as I believe Michael has, it's a tough job. And I can't imagine how tough that job was during COVID. It was probably a pretty brutal job. And the reason why people play brick and mortar is for that overall experience. Unless our industry figures out a way to make that experience better, then you're right. We're a threat to online gaming. We're a threat to people saying, you know what, I'll just play the ETG because I just don't want to deal with all the negativity that happens potentially at a table game today. But when it comes to mid-average bets and higher, I don't see it in the online space in its current platform, right? Playing video blackjack, so not what Evolution and Playtech and all of them do with live studios, just playing like video RNG based bead blackjack is no real BJ experience. And it's almost the same as an ETG. A standalone ETG is nothing more than a video blackjack. Like, you're playing that just because you want to play the game of blackjack, but you are not looking for an experience. You're just looking to gamble. But that mid-tier is really where operators need to focus, in my opinion.
It's all about not necessarily reinventing the experience, but getting back to the fact that we are selling an experience. That's what we're doing.
And as an industry, it's been so hard on everyone, and you don't want to, I know that all my friends that are in ops and some that, I wish, I love being in ops and all that stuff. It's been a tough 5 years, right? With COVID and the, just the cost and inflation and pressure. And, if you work for a publicly traded company and, making sure that you have all your EBITDA goals and all that kind of stuff, like, there's been so much pressure on operators that it's been easy to let the experience of the guests slip.
If I'm not mistaken,
I'll just say one thing. In a perfect world, right, Nick and all the PD folks in the world would not be needed if the experience was impeccable.
You just said the magic word, Nick.
Right? But you think about that, right? If the
There's that gauntlet, Nick. It's been thrown down.
if the experience was impeccable, right? If you think about why we fell in love with the business, why all of us work in the business.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't need somebody calling and be like, hey man, I haven't seen you in 3 months. I need you to come back to the property, right? I'd be coming back every week because it's the best product in the world. Right?
Unbelievable point.
I gotta say one thing, Nick.
Yeah.
Nick. I introduced Ari. Of course, everybody knows Ari, and of course, everybody knows you, of course. But I just got to say one thing, only because I have to say it. Now, who invited you to this podcast?
No. You did.
No. But I just have to say, Nick.
Yeah.
The word to describe Ari is just omnipresent. He's just all over. I mean, he's on every important podcast. He's contributing, helping casinos all over the world, just as you are. But Nick, judging by what I read on LinkedIn, you are more on demand than all the videos put together that I watch on Netflix.
What did you think? I was going to go after Ari or something? You're like you're like protecting him from me. You think I'm going to go? Think I was going to go after him? I know better than that.
Nick, you're so good that I know you're all over the world. really, teaching player development and everything. But if you charge by the word, forget about it.
Let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you a real quick story, and then I want to get into this. But real quick story. Many years ago, I was whatever I was in player development at the Tropicana in Las Vegas, right? And my father, my old man Italian father, who'd never been on an airplane, never been out of Jersey, worked so hard his whole life, worked so hard, harder than anybody I know. His whole life, miserable, miserable, no money. I finally get him out. To Vegas, and he walks around with me at the Tropicana, very quiet, and he watched everything I did as a PD guy and as a casino host. And at the end of the night, I said to him, "What do you think, Dad? You proud of your son?" And he goes, "I think you've been bullshitting your whole life. It's about time you got paid for it." True story. So let me tell you something. I have a saying, and I say it in all my seminars, all my podcasts. I've said it my whole life. Dealers are the most miserable people. I don't say people. Dealers are the most miserable people on the planet. And for 40 years, I've been trying to figure out why. And it was before COVID. They make great money. They get a break every 5 minutes or 3 minutes or 30 seconds. You get a break. You get to go eat food. Why is that experience that we're talking about? And I have been preaching this since online gaming started, before we were all talking about it, that customer service is the only thing that is, I already said it best, we won't even need casino hosts if we had good customer service, if we protected the customer experience.
I think,
and that's why I do my casino customer service now training. I've added that over the years because it's so important to PD. We bring a guy in, all this work and all this phone calls and all these things I teach, and then he gets to the blackjack table and the guy's miserable, right? And then his ratings are wrong. And one guy's watching 7 games, and he's watching the TV. He's watching the football game. He's not even watching 7 games, right? Ratings are always inconsistent. Let's use the word as inconsistent.
Nick, Nick?
I think that's where I think online gaming is going to, and these kids, they're not coming for the experience. Their experience is on the phone. That's their experience.
So what do casinos have to do? Brick and mortar casinos, what do they have to do to, so to speak, save their table games operations so table games don't become extinct?
I don't know about table games.
I think Nick kind of said it, and it's not, it definitely hurts my heart, right? But he's not wrong, right? But the thing is that for all of us that have dealt, no one understands the pain, right? So because I remember I've worked in 9 casinos before I went to the vendor side, and HR was always like, "Why are they so miserable?" And I'm like, "Well, you haven't been to war, so you don't understand."
And they need to fix it. And listen, I never blame an employee. I always blame leadership. I blame leadership since I'm a child, right?
So what I say is that it's the incentive, right? So why do PD folks, have the personalities like you do? When you do a better job, you get paid for it.
Yes.
When you're in the firing line, right? When you're in the firing line, front line, whether you're selling hot dogs or dealing blackjack, you're going to make the same wages that you will. And that's why if you think about, like, when I was a dealer, I broke in as a poker dealer and we kept our own tokes. You didn't need to supervise me. I dealt as fast as I could, and I was as nice as can be.
That's why they had keep your own, right? That's what it was for.
Yep.
But the industry stopped it in the late 80s and 90s. Now, if you go to California, Arizona, a couple of strip properties, Minnesota, I know, Nick, if you went to those properties, you would not say the same thing.
No, I've seen some good properties. I've seen some good dealers. And we talk about leadership. Here's the problem. What in your time and my time, and Richard, to answer your question, when is a CEO or a general manager or a vice president or a president, I know you're listening, and now you're not going to hire me to come train, but that's all right. When are you going to come out of the office and walk around. And when you see a dealer that has my personality, yeah, when are you going to celebrate him in front of all the other miserable dealers? When are you going to hand him a $500 comp to go eat at the steakhouse for beef? What Ari just said, celebrate it. Celebrate the guy, because there are good dealers out there, right? You've all three of you have seen them, right? And I'm all for celebrating that employee. And if that's what it takes, Ari, if that takes motivation, if it takes incentive plan, I don't know what it takes. I've never been a dealer. I don't know the pain, but there has to be motivation and there has to be an incentive plan.
And I think you're right. But, I think Michael's worked for a lot of different companies, and what you're saying is right. But I think a lot of times we've gone down the wrong path, right? So there have been companies out there that have celebrated what you said, but that person can't deal more than 4 hands an hour.
Right.
So I always say when it comes to dealers, right, hiring dealers, and maybe this might not have been the exact topic, Richard, but I think it makes sense, is that first and foremost, you have to mechanically be able to do the job.
Right.
I don't care how nice you are, and your highest level customers would care less if the guy or girl couldn't deal the cards, right? So number one, you got to mechanically be able to do it. Because there's a casino in every jurisdiction nowadays, it's been washed out, right? You go to school for 4 weeks, you could breathe, you got a job. The mechanical part of the job has kind of, in some ways, deteriorated. And then the second thing is, for companies that thought service was number one, dealing was two, and I think dealing is first, service is second, because if you can't deal, you can't service, right?
Skill first.
The dealing is second.
The number one part of the service is the dealing.
Right.
Well,
that's been forgotten.
Skill first. I always teach in my classes, there's skill and there's job, right? Your skill is a blackjack dealer. Your job is customer service. But I don't care if you work in the gift shop. Skill first, and you deliver with your customer service. Go ahead.
So the issue is that we recognize you today. You work in a pooled environment. You're making about $41,000 a year because you're in a pooled environment, and you work for an environment that has 200 tables. And no matter what the company does, you're never going to get much more than that, because that's just what the market has for a pooled environment in that market. So we celebrate you. We'll give you a couple of gift cards or whatever. At the end of the day, that's not going to make a difference.
No.
And that's why I go back to keeping your own, because that's the only silver bullet I know. I'm not smart enough to figure another one, is that I have to find a way to get Nick to deal with that attitude, as efficient as he is. So at the end of the day, he can increase his salary by 40% because Nick has control over that. And our industry is so worried to allow that to happen because they think that every Nick in the world is a thief.
Yeah.
And old school operators would lose a penny would rather lose millions in profit to make sure they catch the one dealer that robbed them for $1.
And meanwhile, right now, you and Richard and Michael could probably walk 30 casinos and go, oh, they just overpaid him. Oh, there's a mistake. Oh, I bet you the three of you could do that, because I do it. I don't even have the knowledge that you three have, and I see it, right? So it goes back to tripping over dollars to save pennies, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
But here's
I think for me, like the future of table games, and I've been saying it I think I said it at Richard's conference last year, and I'm like, that to me, the elephant in the room is that you have to you have to set up your frontline staff, the ones that are truly giving the service. I always say, when I was an executive at a casino, when times are bad, I could hide under my desk when times are bad, right? I could lock the door of my office and hide, and nobody would. But the dealers are there, right? The supervisors are there. They're in the front line. Like, they have to always be on. And the job today, I always say, when I started dealing 22 years ago, I made about $50,000 a year. The average salary of a dealer today is $50,000 a year, but it's 22 years later.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's the problem, right? Now I could drive Uber and make the same amount of money.
Absolutely.
And you said, I'm sorry, Michael.
No, the reward aspect of it that you're talking about, Nick, 100%. We've got to be able to reward people. I think where we're not saying it, but what maybe needs to be said is those that aren't doing it need to get cut. And I think too many properties are too afraid now. Like you said, Ari, hold a mirror under their nose. If they're breathing, throw them behind a table, because we'll make money. Well, we thought we were going to save a fortune when we pulled Boxman off of craps games. And what happened? We got scammed. You know, that $50,000, $75,000 a year we saved for that Boxman. Yeah, we lost 4 times that from scams.
Of course.
So,
and the word that Ari said too. So we're talking about the elements of online gaming. Saturation is going to help online gaming because we're opening casinos on top of. I think there's one opening on the roof of another casino I just read about. They got licensed to open a wholly different company on the roof of another casino. So that saturation is what's killing online gaming. I mean, killing brick and mortar because what Ari said and what you just said, we have to hire anybody that's alive that has, right? Because there's casinos on top of casinos now. We don't have the right, but that is what is going to also kill the experience and help promote online gaming even further. So it's customer service, it's saturation, but the third part is they are not coming for the experience anymore because the kids that are on their phones, their experience is you and I, look, we both know there is social on online gaming. Michael and I could be in different states as we are right now and still be playing on the same game and chatting with each other about you split aces, you idiot, right? Not only that, but we ordered our food from Uber Eats. We're binging our show on Netflix and Amazon's dropping off my new phone so I could play this game, right? So I don't know if maybe are we going against the wind? Are we, you know what I mean? Because I think it's the future, no matter how we slice it up.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Art. Go ahead.
No, I mean, the picture that you're painting, Nick, is what I am most scared of. But it's not today online gaming. Because the online gaming experience today is not.
No.
It's not even close to where it can be. And I know people are talking about, virtual reality, like when all that happens, I think that all becomes the game changer. But today's products are not fun to play.
No.
But if it gets to that point where it's like you're basically in a casino sitting on your couch, then everything changes. But I don't know if that's months, years, or decades away. But some people
describe it as that. I mean, I've read some customers are describing it as that, though I think they think they're getting that experience. I read about it, I hear about it. But no, I know you're right. They're not. I think they're heading there. And here's the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is we all know this. When a CFO goes home at 3:30 in the afternoon or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he walks through the casino, nothing gives him diarrhea and nausea more than a blackjack dealer at an empty game payroll, right?
Yep.
Nothing gives them more nauseousness than that dealer standing there like this, smiling or not, doesn't matter. But he's at an empty game, and I think those are the pioneers in the getting the digital blackjack and not online, but what are we calling them? Digital, or I'm not thinking right.
Yeah, guys, let me ask you one question. We don't have that much time. We've got about 5 minutes to go. Let's just make one question.
Listen, if you don't have a lot of time, you shouldn't have had me on.
You came late, man. Next time, take an Uber and get there faster. I just want to ask, because you were mentioning about the kids, with the Netflix going on and their cell phones and this and that. But to me, what can, a little more in depth, what can casinos do to get a hold of those kids, those 21-year-old kids, to get them into the casinos? Is there anything specifically that they can do to have more of those kids in their casinos?
I'd like to jump on that, and I'm going to go back to some of my past. At the Hard Rock Hotel in the 90s, I used to call it the hottest pickup joint in Los Angeles. It just happened to be a few hundred miles east. They got every kid with mommy and daddy's money, some of it their own, but in that property every weekend, day in, day out. They did it because the dealers could high five. They did it because the dealers would cheer when they won. They did it because they could fist bump. They could belly bump. It was the place to be. and it's where they wanted to be. And if we don't get that experience back, then I think Nick's gonna probably be right. Otherwise, I think, like Ari said, we can still hang on for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nick, my sons are way too young to gamble, and whatever. But I think that the millennial groups are attached to their phones. But honestly, when I was still an operator, 7 years ago, we saw a ton of young people playing table games because it was actually a break from technology, right? Talking to a dealer. The problem with iGaming or any electronic gaming is there's no one to help you. Right, you get 2 8s against the 7. What are you supposed to do? You're not going to look up Google really quick, basic strategy, whatever. If you're playing an ETG or you're playing online live streaming gaming, you have 7 seconds to decide, right? Not too many people can make the right decision in 7 seconds if they don't know. Richard knows every play for every BJ hand is giving. The younger people don't. Then you make a mistake and you feel foolish once you look up that you made the mistake. So iGaming, ETG gaming, when they say it's an entry for the younger demographic, I completely disagree, because when you log on or you put money in an ETG or you play iGaming, you have no idea how to play the game. And again, the social aspect, what you guys are saying is that young people want to break from technology. Right? When I was at Parks before I left to the vendor side, most of our table games business was made up of younger people because they were yearning to have communication with other people versus a phone and all that. So that's my take on it.
I
love Michael's Hard Rock scenario. It's very, very true. Very, very true.
You know what, Nick? The more after the experience of this podcast, you got to start charging by the word.
Hard Rock had a nickname. I can't say it on the podcast. But Michael knows the nickname Hard Rock had. Yeah.
Let me say this, guys. We have a little less than 3 minutes left, and Michael Chapman talking about 2 power guests who just come on over, man, blew right over this podcast, and Nick with his late entry is is forever indelibly printed on my mind. I just want to, this is a great conversation, and it should be longer, but we are going to continue it at the conference, Nick.
Yes.
Now this year, Nick, last year you blew into that conference and you were in and out faster than I could shake your hand. Now this year you got to stay a while.
I promise.
You got to stay a while, and I thank you guys both for coming. Ari, it was great having you. Nick, same here. Michael, thanks again for hosting the show. And this was the second podcast, and I'm still working at it, guys. I'm going to get better. It's a new experience. It's a new experience. Oh, by the way, Nick, I was a dealer too. By the way, believe it or not. But it didn't last that long.
Next, I want to talk about ratings.
All right, so the Global Table Games and Game Protection Conference, March 5th through March 7th, 2024, and Ari and Nick will both be there, as will Michael. And I hope to see all you guys out there watching this at that conference. It's going to be a doozy this year. The 3rd time, this is the big one. Okay, so thank you very much, and we'll see you all at the conference.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Looking forward to it.
Nick, you're a beauty.
I don't have the mere intelligence those you 3 guys have. So I'm
but you sound like you do. But you sound like you do.
That's all that matters. This is my nostril shot you got too this whole time.
I could see your brain working.